everyone. Welcome to Meet the Healers. I'm so excited. On today's show, we have Tamara Archer. Hi, Tamara. Good to see
Hey
you.
there.
Tamara is a certified master somatic coach. She is dedicated to learning throughout her life, and she wants to help women to live their lives fully lit up and help them navigate life transitions with awareness, intention, and grace. So her website is tamaraarcher.com, and I'll post that in my show notes on my website, which is meetthehealer.net. So if you want to get information about Tamara or any of my other videos or podcasts, that's where you go. So today we're going to talk about life coaching and about somatics and a bunch of other stuff. So let's just get started. Describe yourself as a life coach with somatic emphasis. So maybe you can describe what a life coach is or what a life coach does, and what do you mean by somatic emphasis? We'll start there.
Great. Well, I'll start with the second one first so that people can have a context for the rest of our conversation. Somatic is Greek for body. And basically what I am dealing with and where I come from is that absolutely everything that we have lived through or have experienced lives in our body. And that's the good, the bad, the indifferent, right? And actually very little of it is indifferent. And the whole piece about somatic is that when we're triggered, when we're stressed, when we're under duress, what pops into our brain, what comes out of our mouth, what our body does or doesn't do, that is all muscle memory. That has been indoctrinated, embodied for the period of time that we've been living in our body. And what comes out is a well-worn knee-jerk reaction. And so what the whole piece around somatic is we always learn with our brain. So our intelligence and our brain, we learn with that. Never not going to do that. That's all good. What many people are missing is that we also learn with our body. And when we don't include the body's wisdom, we're not getting the whole punch. So it's kind of like saying you're going to lose weight. And the approach that you take is reducing calories. And if that's all you do, you'll definitely lose weight to some extent. But when you include working out as well as reducing calories, then you get much more bang for the buck. You get a lot further, you get deeper, you get more permanent. And so we're always going to learn with our brain. When we add the wisdom of our body, and how do I include a somatic approach to my intellectual piece, then we go deeper and we have more permanent learning. So that's the somatic piece. The life coach piece is there's so many different kinds of coaches out there. There's business coaches, sales coaches, executive coaches. And really what a life coach is can be defined by anyone who holds that title. I like to work with women in transition, but technically it's anywhere that you're stuck. So that's anywhere in your life. What I want more than anything else is for women to be lit up and living fully, because when women are sharing their gifts and lit up and being who they are full out and authentically, oh my God, every life that they touch is improved, enhanced, and it's that rising tide raises all ships. At a nutshell, that's what I'm about.
When you talk about it, you light up. So I can see, an example in you of what you're doing. Have you used this work in order to light yourself up?
Absolutely. And all my girlfriends, certainly you being one of them, everyone that I know that is doing some type of what they call drawn to, called to work, they get to that because of something they've experienced. For myself, and then I'll include pretty much almost any women I've met, I grew up or was raised or embodied this whole thing of I'm not enough, or was trying to be, whether it was from my family of origin or cultural or anything else, fit into what other people needed me to be or wanted me to be. And I can't tell you how many conferences and workshops and programs I've been in where I have met women who are intelligent, dynamic, they are successful in so many different areas, and yet they are hampered by, I'm not fill in the blank. I'm not a good enough wife. I'm not smart enough. I need another degree. I don't have enough credibility. And it just saddens my heart. And I'm looking at them going, how can you even possibly entertain that thought. And yet that is the piece, that's the somatic rub. So that is all the intellectual indoctrination, as I said, from our institutions, from our families of origin, from our religion, from our culture, from our siblings, from our coaches. All of that information comes into our brain and it lands in our body. And if we don't examine that thoughtfully, those are inherited conversations that we're just acting on. I needed to interrupt that conversation. I was raised with conversations like, why are you such a problem? Why do you always have to be a problem? Why can't you just fit in? Why can't you be like fill in the blank? And I kept sitting there going, well, hello, I'm me. Why can't you see me? Why can't you accept me? There's nothing wrong with me. But at the same time, as a 7, 8-year-old, 9, 10-year-old, 13, 15-year-old, we're social animals. And I needed to fit in because to be belonging to the herd was safe. And if you were outside of the herd, that was death. And so I was constantly in this internal struggle of, I need to be me, but being me isn't accepted. Being me isn't loved. Being me isn't enough. And so I moved 3,000 miles away. It's like, okay, I have to get away from wherever I was raised and go to some place which seems more inclusive. And that was the beginning of my personal transformation. It was my introduction to personal development. And through that, I was introduced to somatics. I have to say, I'm going to say I squandered those early years of, yeah, I get this. And because I understood it intellectually, like I had it. But that's the myth, that because you can understand something intellectually means that you've got it. And we can understand stuff all day long. If we do not change our habits, if our body doesn't do anything differently, then it's simply intellectual understanding and it doesn't go any deeper. And so I raised my kids with this, as best I could, with this somatic understanding, and they are light years ahead of where I was at their age. We all have traumas and transitions in our life. And it took me exiting a long-term marriage and taking some significant downtime for myself to simply get quiet and to stop doing and to stop being active and taking care of everybody else and just listen for, now what? Who am I at this age as an empty nester with an unknown future? What lights me up? What do I want to do? What are the gifts that not only am I good at, but light me up and make a difference in other people's lives? And so I was in coaching, or I was a coach years ago inside someone else's organization. And I don't work well in HR. Like, I break too many rules, I'm an HR headache. And so I've always been kind of my own self. And so being back in business for myself and including the coaching and working with women, because I know that conversation personally, it was the perfect fit. And I love when my clients say, that was so simple, I understood it, I just didn't know how to get it done. And to be their accountability person and their person to help guide them. If I can put my head on my pillow at the end of the day and go, job well done, another person has shifted their trajectory, and I know if I shift one person, then the generations that come from that person are also shifted. That's makes me heart. That's like happy to be able to do that work. Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. I love that. What just came to mind for me is all these stories I hear about, kind of breaking those patterns, of those generational patterns of like, well, my parents spoke to me this way and treated me this way, so that's how I'm going to treat my kids. When in fact, a lot of people didn't get the proper support that we needed, and a lot of us are in that boat of like, I'm not good enough. So that's great that you're doing that work to try to break those cycles and others as well.
It's very gratifying, deeply gratifying. Absolutely.
So what do you think trips people up when they're going through a transition?
It's the same thing that trips any of us up. It's just that the transitions are a marked time in our lives, some more significant than others. Like, our life has a beginning, middle, and end. A transition has a beginning, middle, and end. Those are the things that it's easy to measure. And I, as much as I believe in the universal and spiritual laws. At the heart of it, I'm a pragmatist. It's got to be grounded. It's got to be measurable. And that doesn't mean I don't have faith, right? So I trust in things, but there's a lot of challenge with leaving everything in the quote unquote woo-woo space. So here's the thing about transitions, that some are anticipated. So if we've had kids, then at some point in time, we're going to be empty nesters, right? That can be anticipated, right? As we age, at some time, barring any calamity, we're going to turn 30 and we're going to turn 50 and we're going to turn 60, right? Then there's the unanticipated ones where unexpectedly you get a promotion, unexpectedly you get downsized. Oh crap, unexpectedly COVID shows up, right? And the gig is that the length of time we've lived in our body, what has become embodied are all of the habits. Some of those habits support us. Those are the ones we don't really pay attention to because they amplify, they help, they don't get our attention. It's the ones that are unsupportive that we keep bumping into a breakdown, and we realize that we're acting against our better selves. So the example I have for myself is when I was single, I'm very organized. I love things in their place. I'm neat and tidy. I have a design aesthetic. I need my space to look a certain way. When I was single, it was handled, right? I got married, still relatively handled. And then you add a kid and then another one. And it was like and then I started my own business. And all of a sudden my skill and my capacity to keep things organized and tidy and working a certain way was beyond what I could handle. So many people will internalize that like I'm a failure. What's wrong with me? Or I'm no good at this, instead of, no, a few things changed in our lives. And so with transitions, what happens is there's no definition really from one day to the next. And we don't really examine that every day we're building new or different, or we're just bringing the same habits. And when we hit a transition, like if I go from being an employee to an entrepreneur, it's going to require me being a different self. It's going to require that I bring certain skills to this new stage, to this new conversation. It's going to require that I jettison some habits that, like relying on someone else to maybe tell me what to do, right? That doesn't work when you're an entrepreneur. And if people aren't thoughtfully engaging in what about me is working or not working for this new phase, this new role, what's missing, what is existing that works, but I may need to amplify it, what is destructive or undermining that I need to get rid of. And it's so much easier for us to see other people's stuff than it is for us to see our own. So as a coach, I help people see what they can't see because they're in their own lives so deeply, to see, given what their goals are, given what they care about, given what they want to accomplish, how do they craft that narrative of who's the self that I need to be now and into the next 2 months or 2 years or 2 decades, and what's missing that I need to put in place. And as I said, there's the different skill sets. So it's that piece that trips us up, that we just keep going through our day without realizing something fundamentally in our body, something fundamentally in our mindset, something fundamentally in our outlook more than likely needs to shift to be able to achieve who we say we want to become in order to take on that role, that new phase successfully and as gracefully as possible. Because no one likes putting their foot in their mouth, like no one likes falling down. And when I said at the very beginning that somatics is about moving through intentionally when you get triggered, a number of people hear that and they go, oh, the goal is to not get triggered. It's like, no, that's never going to happen. We are all always going to get triggered. The goal is, what tools do I need to have in place so that I can come back more quickly when I get triggered? Because it's not if, it's when and how often. So I still get triggered. I get the crap triggered out of me. It's just like everybody else, but what's not like everybody else is mine are more shallow than they used to be, and they're not as long.
Mm.
I still get triggered, and some people or things will trigger me more deeply than others, but I can surf through them and get through them more quickly and with less trauma than what I did before. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a major win. And when I can help my clients get to that place, they notice that peace of mind has come in, that ease and grace has entered into their lives in a way they never, ever thought possible. And it comes from awareness.
That's where it starts, is just being
Yep.
aware of it. And then over time, when we can start recognizing it sooner and sooner, then we can recognize that we're getting triggered, and then we can do something about it instead of just
Absolutely.
doing what we normally would have done before, which is usually not healthy or productive.
Absolutely. And we can take it one step further. So the first step is simply to start noticing. And what I tell my clients when I first start working with them is, if you haven't been noticing before, then it may take you 2 hours to notice the first time. Oh, shoot, I've been triggered for the last 2 hours. So instead of beating yourself up, you go, yay, I just noticed, right? And the goal is to get it into 1 hour and then 10 minutes and then as close to the event as possible. But build that strength first. And then the magic part on top of that is then we can start knowing, you know what, there's always this person or these few people that I can absolutely count on triggering me. And these kinds of situations I know are my hardest things to deal with. So when you know those are coming, like you're going to be with Uncle Joe, or you're going to be with your sibling, or you're going to be with whoever triggers you, you can start pre-framing when I show up with this person or when I find myself in this conversation, how do I want to be? What are questions I can ask? How can I be different? How can I move differently? And simply and powerfully, you moving differently fundamentally shifts the interaction between you and the other situation or the person. So you can start, it gives people a sense of control that they never had before, because they're in charge of themselves much more than they had in the past. And when they're grounded and when they're centered, it automatically starts affecting the other person. And the analogy that I do for that is, if anyone's played tennis or understands the concept of tennis, we're in these dances with our people in our lives. And the reason why it keeps going on is because we keep hitting the ball back and forth over the net. And once one person has decided that no longer works, I'm going to lay my racket down, it fundamentally shifts the game. And the other person has a couple of choices. More than likely, a lot of people are going to jump up and down and scream and holler and try and guilt you into picking up the racket again, because even though the game isn't as great for them, it's the game they know. Or they can just give up and walk away, and there's other options in between. But it fundamentally changes the game. And then you have to invent a new game, and you get to create the rules for, okay, that's done. So how are we going to engage now? How do we want to live our lives together now? And that's the fabulous part, that again, having a life coach can help you with helping you get clear on what do you care about and what are the questions to ask, and coming up with your own questions and crafting a life that you want to live, instead of trying to fulfill the inherited conversations that we receive from all those other people. And like I said, culture, institutions, religions, family, it's not their life, it's your life.
It's very powerful when you can be in yourself and be grounded, and then
Yep.
flip the energy around the relationship. We can only have control over ourselves. So that's
Why has my life sucked for the last 10 years or 1 year or 2 months? And it's a lack of awareness of how are we contributing to it, because we always are in some fashion. And what is it that I'm doing, and what do I need to do differently against the background of what is it that I want to produce? And that may be a different answer for you than for me, than for Jane, than for Mary. You know, it's all different. And I think one of the biggest things that I work with, and again, this isn't necessarily with transitions, but it's life coaching in general, is helping people notice how they frame their reality with their words. I love word pictures because it lets people see graphically or hear graphically what's going on. We've all heard the example of the glass is half full or half empty, right? So how I set it up is, in an 8-ounce glass, if you have 4 ounces of liquid, that's a data point. You can actually measure, oh, there's 4 ounces in an 8-ounce glass. That is a fact. Whether the glass is half full or half empty, that is an interpretation. That is an opinion. Way back when you and I were kids, and journalists actually were supposed to be writing factually,
Yeah.
except for the op-ed section. You know, you could read a newspaper and it was factual, right? It was data-based. Well, that has been for decades now long gone. And what's happened is that people, including ourselves, we listen to other people's interpretations as if they're fact. And we speak our interpretations and our opinions as if they're fact. And if we don't know the difference between an interpretation and a fact, we can be so hamstrung by that. So it's the piece around, again, whether it's a transition or not, but it's typically in transitions where some of those biases show up. Like if you're 50 years old, you're too old to find someone who's sexy and hot, or older women aren't going to attract younger men, or if you're older, you're not going to be employable. You know, that those are just some age related things, right? Facts are facts, opinions are opinions, and we're tending to merge those two, and that affects our mood, and our mood affects our outlook, and you know, it can spiral up or spiral down. So how we speak about things makes a huge difference. And so I'll give an example. So I was in a conversation the other morning with one of my kids. They're now both young adults, so I don't have any more control, right? They're past the legal ages. And it was a challenging conversation. And we kind of took a break, and she walked around the block, and I had to kind of go get myself centered. And I was thinking about, okay, when we re-engage, how do I want to re-engage? And in my head, I was trying to think of what questions could I ask her? And so one of the questions was, why are you upset with me? And that was one of many questions. And I realized, oh, she may not be upset at me at all. Right. So, but if I started with that, I could have directed the entire conversation in such a way that it would have been all about me and where I was at fault and all that kind of stuff. So I took a step back and went, oh, what's the source of your upset? Because clearly she was upset. And what came out had the first 5 things out of her mouth had nothing to do with me. I'm so tired of COVID. Like nothing's going my way, and I'm frustrated. And every time I try and make plans with somebody, the game changes, and we can't do this, and we can't do this. And it's just like, life sucks right now, right? We're all feeling that, right? That's global right now. Had I started off with, why are you upset with me? She may not have had the presence of mind to go, oh, mom, it has nothing to do with you. It's all this other stuff. So that's that piece of taking a step back. What relationship do I want to have with this person? That is always a question I ask myself. Getting grounded and centered in my body, and getting curious instead of coming from, I know, I understand the situation. Because for me, that gets me stumbled down a path faster than anything else. But when I get curious, it opens up miraculously totally different questions. And we had a friggin' phenomenal conversation that was more expansive, more healing, brought us closer together quicker than her trying to explain why it wasn't all about me, and why do I think it's all about me anyway, and all that nonsense, right? So that's all the piece around breathing, which is a huge somatic tool. Being grounded in your body, huge somatic tool. Being aware, because I consider myself a flashlight. All I do, and it is by no means not powerful, but what my job is to shine a flashlight on what is not being seen. And once we see it, we at least have the possibility of doing something about it. There's no guarantee, no promise, but we have the possibility of shifting once we're aware.
Can you share 1 or 2 like somatic exercises or whatever to demonstrate what that might look like or what that might feel like?
Sure. I'll give you one, because it is every single client I've ever worked with or shared this with has said, hands down, this has been the most significant impact and effect for them. And it's so crazy simple, not easy, but crazy simple. And again, it started with, what do I need? Like, it's like, how do I help myself get this? Because it was all cerebral, and that took me to a certain distance, but not all the way. So I repurposed the acronym ABC. And what I loved about ABC is it's synonymous with the fundamentals of something. And I came up with words, again, they may already be out there, but they came up from my point of view to what are the three fundamental things to have you be able to be conscious, purposeful, and impactful in your life. So A is absolutely awareness. You have to be aware that you've been triggered, that you've been grabbed, that you're under stress, that you're under pressure. If you're not aware of that, you're automatically in reaction mode, right? And the other piece in that is that if you're experiencing an emotion, you have been triggered. So people can think that the only thing that triggers them is bad emotions like hate or frustration or anger. It's like, no, I can be totally excited and just as out of my body as being pissed off at somebody. So if you're experiencing an emotion, you've been triggered. And here's the gig. When emotion goes up, intelligence comes down. And what I mean by that is your capacity to think clearly in the moment is diminished significantly if you're not breathing, if you're triggered. So the first thing with ABC, A is awareness. Know that you've been triggered. That takes some training and awareness. The B of ABC is to take a breath. And you need to take, what I tell people is take 3 slow, deep belly breaths. This is not the high breathing up here, but it's the low diaphragmatic breathing, and it will fundamentally bring you back into your body where you can feel your skin, feel your butt, feel your feet, and you can think again. And then the C of ABC is to choose. Choose what is the next best step. I had to develop for myself 2 questions that I can ask myself that help me choose. If it's a person I'm having an interaction with, then my question is, what relationship do I want to have with this person? If it's one of my kids, I want to have a deep, meaningful, rich conversation for the rest of our lives. If it's a colleague, I may just need to have a civil, respectful, professional relationship with them, and that's fine. If it's one of my family members, I'm keeping this particular person at arm's length. Right? So it's different for everybody. But once I know what relationship I want, then the next step is much more evident when it's followed by I'm aware that I'm triggered and I've been taking a breath. And then the second question I ask, if it's a circumstance as opposed to a person, then the question I ask myself is, who do I need to be right now? What's required of me right now? Other versions of that is, how do I want to be received, or how do I want to be perceived, or what's a win-win for both of us here? All of that brings me into the space where I have to put on my big girl panties. I have to get out of, I know I'm right. I want to be right. I want them to acknowledge that I'm right. If they would just do it my way, right? All that ego-driven stuff. And really look at what is required of me right now. And those 2 questions, what's required of me right now, or who's the self I want to be, and what's the relationship I want to have with people, that brings me back into, oh, this isn't about right now. This is a longer term, potentially a longer term conversation. So for people to do ABC when they are triggered, when they're stressed, when they are under pressure, fundamentally will shift the quality of the relationships that they have in their lives, fundamentally shift the relationship and the capacity that they have for themselves to move differently. And just like the tennis match, when they shift, the people in their lives are forced to shift because they don't engage the same way. So that is the number 1, hands down, most powerful tool that I use with my clients. And there's not been one person who went, knew that, did that, no worries. Like, they're like, oh my God, so simple. And it changes lives. And it's all about somatic stuff.
Really reminds me, I know that you did a lot of work with emotional intelligence kind of stuff as well. And that's kind of one of the things that they also, this is where it goes back to that too, is like, you need to stop and take a breath and then you can, to get your kind of cognitive brain back online.
Right. This really does, it illustrates the significance of how superior our brain is, because there's not one person that hasn't heard that explanation, went, oh my God, that's fantastic. That's simple. I can do that. And they think that because they can understand it and it makes sense and it's reasonable. That's entirely different than when you're in the midst of the trigger, being willing to do something different. So that's the rub. That's the difference between an intellectual, intelligent, cognitive awareness. And in that moment of angst and stress and pressure and trigger, you're willing to do something else. So it has to start in our brain. You have to be aware, I've been triggered. I'm friggin' pissed off. I am out of my body. I don't know what to do. And in the past, we would, I'm going to make it up, quit, leave the room, exit. We would stop the confrontation because it's just too far. It's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And you have to have that awareness that I've been triggered. That was my pattern in the past. I'm going to take some breaths. I'm going to stay present, and I'm going to get curious and ask some questions. I'm going to stay engaged with this person. That is tremendously discomforting for many people, especially the first time or 10 times or 25 times. But just like riding a bike, the more you do it, that becomes the new habit. And that in and of itself is the difference between intellectual understanding and living somatically. You have to be willing to move differently.
Basically, we're rewiring the neural pathways in our brain because
Absolutely.
we're in the middle of this COVID thing right now. So normally I know that you do in-person workshops. If you have anything you're offering now during the COVID times, and how can people learn about them?
So meetups have gone on hold for the time being. All of my coaching is over the phone. So that's the good news. So as long as somebody has a Zoom connection, that's always how I've coached for the last 3+ years. And I've had people in Australia and stateside, and again, as long as you have a Zoom connection, we're good to go there. I have been offering a 1-hour free Zoom call. At the moment, it's called How to Ground and Center When You're Triggered. It gives something for the brain and something for the body, which is the ABC piece on how to handle anytime you're triggered, but especially now in COVID. And then I'm also doing and this will be ongoingly, a 6-week small group coaching program where we go through very specific practices, and it's small groups. So it's not like there's individual coaching going on, but it's a small format where people can ask questions that they want to, and it's and they're not lost in a 40-person call. So that's what I'm doing. I'm doing the 1-hour free call. I'm doing a 6-week program. Hopefully very soon, I'm going to be moving what I used to do as a half-day workshop outside, social distanced, because that is where people really get to see, with me working with them personally and me working with other people, they get to see the power of when someone looks at things from a somatic viewpoint. The responses I get is, you just watched me walk 4 paces from there to there, and the assessments that you had of me, that's what my boss has been saying for the last 3 months. That's why I got a divorce. That's what my family's been telling me my entire life. And I walked 4 paces and you nailed it. Like, what are you watching? What are you seeing? What am I saying? What am I doing that has you make that assessment? And it's simply, yet powerfully, a somatic awareness. And so when I say our body, actually, I don't know if I said it yet already on this call, our body broadcasts what we think and feel and believe to anyone who sees us, and we just don't know it, or we're probably not aware of it. And so that's what with the coaching, that's what I bring as an awareness to people, so they can start realizing, I'm broadcasting whether I know it or not. I want to be broadcasting what I want to broadcast and not what I don't want. And how do I heal some of the things that I'm broadcasting that no longer support me?
What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yep. So they can go to my website, which is tamaraarcher.com. You mentioned that at the beginning. There's always going to be a place on there for an email for where they'll get my phone number, an email address, and probably a link to scheduling a discovery call with me. So they just need to go to that web page, and it'll tell them how to get in touch with me, and we can have an initial complimentary consultation to assess what is it they're looking to accomplish. Are we a good fit? Because it's got to be both ways. They have to feel good about me. I have to feel good about them. And because there has to be that trusting environment, and look at, given what they're up to and what they want to accomplish and what I offer, what would be the best place to start.
Is there anything else you want to share with our listeners before we close out?
That's a great question. Here's my current assessment, is that many people think that how they move, that it's fixed. Oh, that's just who I am. That's how I act. Or when I get in that situation, that's just me. People are, that's just, I've been on the planet for so long, it's just me. And I don't think that they have any awareness at how much of that really is not permanent. It's not part of their personality. It's not who they are at their core. And it's not up for me to say they need to change or shift. It's if they are not living a life that lights them up, that makes them feel good, that has ease and fulfillment and satisfaction, it might be worth a curious inquiry to go, what would that look like? What would that sound like? How would I be? What would my life be like if I had what I truly wanted, and without the resignation of that's not even possible because it's me? And so working with someone who can see a certain way, who can help you shift, who can be accountability partner for you to work towards the goals. That is the biggest gift you can give yourself, is to go, I feel stuck. I'm getting these assessments periodically or from the same people in my life. It's not working and I don't know what to do with it. I'm not happy with it, but I don't know what to do. Is to reach out and line up with somebody who has the skill set and the ability to work with you in a way so that you can live the life that you want. I've seen it over and over and over again, women transforming their lives and telling me, I had no idea happy could feel this way. I had no idea that love could be this way. I had no idea that I could be at home in my own skin this way. It's not easy. It takes hard work because, as long, we've got decades built into this body. It is possible. And if that's something that intrigues you and that you're looking for something like that, then absolutely reach out. And if I'm not the person to help them, I'm not attached to that. I have got so many people resource deep that I can refer them to.
All right, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for your time. I really appreciate that you're doing this. Thanks again.
Thank you.